This area is reserved for premium guests only. The words sliced through the poolside calm like broken glass. A young black girl looked up from her book, confusion spreading across her face as the cleaning worker loomed over her, mop in hand like a weapon of authority. The Mediterranean sun blazed overhead, golden, endless, indifferent. Around her, guests sipped champagne and pretended not to notice, but something had already been set in motion, something that would shake this luxury cruise to its core. 16-year-old Amara Williams sat perfectly still on the cushioned lounge chair, her legs crossed at the ankle, a hardcover novel resting gently in her lap. The title embossed in gold letters read, The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. She'd been reading for the better part of an hour, lost in the weight of each sentence, the rhythm of thought and resistance woven through every page. Around her, the pool deck of the Oceania Serenity luxury cruise ship sparkled under the afternoon Mediterranean sun. Crystal water shimmered in the rectangular infinity pool. White umbrellas cast perfect circles of shade. Guests in designer swimwear reclined with mojitos and laughter, their conversations floating lazily through the warm, salt air. Amara had chosen this spot deliberately. It was tucked near the edge of the premium deck, quieter than the main pool area, with a view of the endless blue horizon. She wore a simple white linen sundress over her swimsuit, her natural hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her brown skin glowed softly in the light. She looked peaceful, unbothered, exactly as she should have been. This was supposed to be a celebration. Her father had surprised her with this 10-day Mediterranean cruise as a reward for finishing her junior year with a perfect GPA and being accepted into an elite summer pre-law program at Yale. She'd worked for it, sacrificed weekends, stayed up late studying, ignored the distractions her classmates indulged in. And now, for the first time in months, she was allowing herself to simply exist, to read, to breathe, to be a teenager without the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. But peace, she would soon learn, was a privilege not granted equally. The first sign of trouble came in the form of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, accompanied by the wet squeak of rubber soles on tile. Amara didn't look up at first. She assumed it was a staff member passing by, perhaps clearing a nearby table or adjusting an umbrella, but the footsteps stopped, directly beside her. She felt the shadow before she saw him. A tall, stocky man in his early 30s stood over her, holding a long-handled mop. He wore the standard white uniform of the cleaning crew, his name tag partially obscured by the strap of his tool belt. His face was ruddy, his expression hard, lips pressed into a thin line of irritation. He stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Amara glanced up, offering a polite smile. "Hi." Her voice was soft, courteous. He didn't return the smile. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if examining something out of place. "This area," he said slowly, "is reserved for premium guests only." Amara blinked, her smile fading. "I'm sorry?" "Premium guests," he repeated, louder this time. His tone carried an edge now, sharp and accusatory. "You can't just sit here because you feel like it." She straightened in her chair, confusion mixing with something sharper, defensiveness, hurt. "I am a guest. I have a cabin on Deck 9, Suite 912. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Deck 9? That's standard cabins. This is the premium pool deck. You need a wristband." Amara looked down at her wrist. She wasn't wearing one. She hadn't been told she needed one. Her father had booked everything. She assumed access to the ship's amenities was automatic. "I wasn't given a wristband," she said carefully. "But I'm sure if you check the system, my room number will show I'm allowed to be here." The man's eyes narrowed. "Room number doesn't mean anything. If you don't have the band, you're not supposed to be here." Around them, a few heads turned. Not many, just enough to make Amara's cheeks warm with embarrassment. An older couple in matching sun hats whispered to each other. A woman in oversized sunglasses lowered her magazine slightly, watching over the rim. Amara's fingers tightened around her book. "I didn't know about the wristband policy. I can go to guest services and get one if that's required." "You should have done that before coming up here," the man said flatly. "This isn't a public area. It's for people who paid for premium access. The implication hung in the air like smoke. People who paid? People like you don't belong here. Amara felt something twist in her stomach. Not anger yet. Something colder. Humiliation. I'll go now, she said quietly, gathering her book and the small canvas bag at her feet. She stood, shoulders squared, trying to maintain her composure even as her hands trembled slightly. But the man didn't move. He blocked her path, mop still in hand, eyes locked on hers. Next time, follow the rules. She met his gaze, her voice steady but firm. I didn't break any rules. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't an excuse, he said, voice dripping with condescension. Then he turned, dragging his mop across the tiles as if sweeping away something unpleasant. Amara stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt every eye on the deck watching her, judging her, assuming she didn't belong, assuming she'd tried to sneak into a space she hadn't earned. She walked slowly toward the exit, head held high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But inside, something had shattered. By the time she reached the elevator, tears blurred her vision. She pressed the button for Deck 9, stepped inside, and let the doors close. Only then did she let out a shaky breath, pressing her palms against her eyes. She wasn't crying because of the wristband. She was crying because no one had asked her name. No one had checked the system. No one had given her the benefit of the doubt. They had looked at her, a young black girl alone, and decided she didn't belong. Back on the pool deck, the cleaning worker, whose name tag read Marcus Dillon, returned to his station near the storage closet. He muttered something to a co-worker, a younger woman restocking towels. Another one trying to sneak into premium. Caught her before she got too comfortable? The co-worker glanced over. You sure she wasn't supposed to be there? She didn't have a band, Marcus said with finality. That's all I need to know. What Marcus didn't know was that Amara's father, Vincent Williams, was not just a guest. He was the silent majority investor in Oceania Cruise Lines, a private equity magnate who had quietly acquired a controlling stake in the company 18 months prior. He traveled under an alias to avoid attention, preferring privacy over recognition, and he had spent the last year conducting discreet audits of the company's operations, looking for patterns of discrimination, inequality, and abuse of power. His daughter's experience on this cruise wasn't an accident. It was a test, and the ship had just failed. Hours later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, Vincent Williams sat in the captain's private dining room. He was a tall man in his late 40s, dressed in a simple linen shirt and dark slacks. His demeanor was calm, his voice measured. Across from him sat Captain Elena Rousseau, the ship's commanding officer, and Gregory Hale, the cruise line's regional operations director. Vincent placed a tablet on the table. On the screen was a still image from a security camera. Amara standing on the pool deck. Marcus Dillon looming over her. That, Vincent said quietly, is my daughter. Captain Rousseau's face went pale. Gregory Hale's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. And this, Vincent continued, swiping to the next image, is the moment your employee decided she didn't belong. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Vincent leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Now let's talk about what happens next. Captain Elena Rousseau's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. She was a woman who had commanded vessels through hurricanes, navigated diplomatic crises with demanding passengers, and maintained composure under the most intense scrutiny. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. Sitting across from her was not just another wealthy guest with a complaint. This was Vincent Williams, the man whose signature appeared on her employment contract, the man whose investment firm controlled 62% of Oceania Cruise Line's voting shares. And she had just been shown footage of his 16-year-old daughter being humiliated on her ship. Gregory Hale, the operations director, cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Williams, I want to assure you that this is not representative of our company's values. We have strict protocols in place to prevent exactly this kind of... Stop. Vincent's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. Hale's mouth snapped shut. Vincent tapped the tablet screen, pulling up a new document. Before we continue, let me show you something else. The screen displayed a spreadsheet. Rows and rows of incidents, dates, passenger names, staff members involved, and outcomes. Captain Rousseau leaned forward, squinting at the data. Her stomach dropped. "These are discrimination complaints," Vincent said, his tone conversational, almost academic. "Filed over the past 14 months across your fleet. 47 incidents, 29 involving racial discrimination, 18 involving guests being removed from premium areas based solely on appearance. And of those 18, 16 involved black passengers." Hale's face had gone from flushed to ashen. "Where did you get this data?" "I compiled it," Vincent replied. "Quietly, carefully, using passenger feedback forms, social media reports, and testimony from former staff members who were brave enough to speak up after leaving your employment." He swiped again. Now the screen showed photos. Different ships, different locations, but the same pattern. Black families questioned at gala dinners. Black teenagers asked to show room keys at pool decks. Black couples escorted away from premium lounges by staff who assumed they didn't belong. "This isn't an isolated incident, Captain," Vincent said, his eyes locking onto hers. "This is a culture. And today, my daughter became another data point in your systemic failure." Captain Rousseau's voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "I had no idea the scope was this extensive." "That's the problem," Vincent said. "You should have." He leaned forward, elbows resting on the polished table. "Do you know what my daughter said to me when she came back to our suite this afternoon?" Silence. "She asked me if she'd done something wrong. If she'd been too loud, too careless, too much. A 16-year-old girl with a 4.0 GPA who reads W.E.B. Du Bois for pleasure, who has never caused trouble in her life, was questioning whether she deserved to exist in a space she paid to occupy." His voice didn't rise, but the weight of every word pressed down like gravity. "That is what your employee did to her. That is what your system allowed." Gregory Hale tried again, voice shaking. "We will terminate Marcus Dillon immediately. Full investigation, public apology. Whatever you need." Vincent's gaze shifted to him, cold and assessing. "You think firing one man solves this?" Hale hesitated. "It's a start." "No," Vincent said. "It's a distraction. Firing Marcus Dillon doesn't address why he felt empowered to treat my daughter that way. It doesn't explain why no supervisor questioned his judgment. It doesn't change the fact that 46 other incidents happened before today, and your company did nothing meaningful to stop them." He stood, walking slowly toward the window. Beyond the glass, the Mediterranean stretched endlessly, dark blue merging with twilight purple. Passengers laughed on the lower decks, unaware of the storm brewing above them. "Here's what's going to happen," Vincent said, turning back to face them. "First, you will convene an emergency meeting with your entire senior staff. Tonight. Every department head, every manager, every person with decision-making authority. They will be informed that I am now personally overseeing operational reforms." Captain Rousseau opened her mouth to respond, but Vincent continued. "Second, you will implement an immediate audit of all staff interactions involving premium area access. Every incident logged in the past 18 months will be reviewed by an independent equity firm I'm bringing aboard. They will identify patterns, systemic failures, and individuals who have repeatedly violated your supposed non-discrimination policies." Hale's pen was moving frantically across his notepad. "Third, Marcus Dillon will not be quietly let go. He will face a formal disciplinary hearing, public, transparent, with passenger representatives present. And if the evidence shows what I already know it will show, he will be terminated for cause and barred from working in hospitality industry positions affiliated with any company I have influence over." The captain's voice was barely a whisper. "And fourth?" Vincent's expression didn't change. "Fourth, you will issue a company-wide video message. Not a polished PR statement. A real acknowledgement. You will admit that Oceania Cruise Lines has failed to protect its black passengers from discrimination. You will outline the steps being taken to correct this, and you will make it clear that this behavior will no longer be tolerated at any level." Gregory Hale looked like he might be sick. "Mr. Williams, a public admission like that could trigger lawsuits, media scrutiny, shareholder panic." "Good," Vincent said simply. Because all of those things are preferable to continuing to harm people who trust you with their vacations, their celebrations, their peace. He returned to his seat, placing both hands flat on the table. I didn't buy into this company to make money. I already have money. I bought in because I believed luxury travel could be a space where black families, black children, could exist without being questioned, surveilled, or humiliated. I was wrong. But I'm going to fix it. Captain Rousseau met his gaze. For the first time, there was something like resolve in her eyes. What do you need from me? Accountability, Vincent said. And the courage to do what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. She nodded slowly. You'll have it. Meanwhile, down in the crew quarters, Marcus Dillon sat in the staff break room scrolling through his phone. He was laughing at a meme when his supervisor, a severe woman named Patricia Kern, appeared in the doorway. Dillon, captain's office now. He looked up, confused. What for? Just go. Her tone left no room for questions. Marcus stood, still holding his phone, and followed her through the narrow corridors toward the administrative deck. He wasn't worried. He'd done his job. Enforced the rules. Kept the premium areas exclusive, just like management always emphasized. When he entered the captain's office, he stopped short. Captain Rousseau sat behind her desk, expression unreadable. Beside her stood Gregory Hale, and in the corner, arms crossed, stood a man Marcus didn't recognize. Tall, composed, dressed simply but expensively. Vincent Williams. Have a seat, Mr. Dillon, the captain said. Marcus sat suddenly uneasy. What's this about? This afternoon, you removed a young woman from the premium pool deck, Captain Rousseau said. Do you remember? He shrugged. Yeah, she didn't have a wristband. That's the policy. Did you verify her room number? She said deck 9, standard cabins. Those guests aren't supposed to be up there. Vincent spoke for the first time, his voice calm but edged with steel. Did you check the system to confirm? Marcus glanced at him, irritation flickering across his face. I don't need to. No wristband means no access. That's how it works. Except, Vincent said, Suite 9-2 is not a standard cabin. It's a premium suite. One of only 8 on this ship. And the guest you removed was my daughter. The color drained from Marcus Dillon's face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Vincent stepped forward. You didn't ask her name. You didn't check the system. You didn't give her the benefit of the doubt. You looked at a 16-year-old black girl and decided she didn't belong. And when she tried to explain, you humiliated her in front of dozens of people. Marcus stammered. I was just following policy. No, Vincent interrupted. You were following bias, and it's going to cost you everything. If you're watching this, and you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong somewhere you paid to be, drop a comment telling us where you're from. Let's build a community that says, we see you, we believe you, and we're... The formal hearing took place in the ship's conference room the following evening. It wasn't hidden away in some administrative corner. Vincent had insisted it be held in a space large enough to accommodate witnesses. The room was filled. Crew members lined the walls, some curious, others visibly uncomfortable. A handful of passengers who had witnessed the pool deck incident sat in chairs near the front, summoned by Captain Rousseau herself. Among them was the older couple in matching sun hats, the woman with oversized sunglasses, and a young man who had been reading nearby when it happened. At the head of the table sat Captain Rousseau, Gregory Hale, and Patricia Kern, Marcus Dillon's direct supervisor. To their left sat Vincent Williams, composed and silent. And beside him, for the first time since the incident, sat Amara. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers interlaced. She looked calm, but her father could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened ever so slightly. He reached over and gently placed his hand over hers. She glanced at him, and he gave her the smallest nod. You're not alone. Marcus Dillon sat across from them, flanked by a union representative, a wiry man named Coleman, who kept whispering hurried legal advice into his ear. Marcus looked less confident than he had the day before. His uniform was wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. His hands fidgeted with a pen on the table, clicking it nervously, the sound sharp in the tense silence. Captain Rousseau began. This hearing has been convened to address a formal complaint of discriminatory conduct filed by Mr. Vincent Williams on behalf of his daughter, Amara Williams. Mr. Dillon, you are accused of removing Miss Williams from the premium pool deck without proper verification, using language and behavior that violated company policy and basic standards of respect. Marcus shifted in his seat. I was enforcing access policy. She didn't have a wristband. Did you verify her room number in the system? The captain asked. No, but she told me she was in Deck 9. Standard cabins don't get premium access. Gregory Hale leaned forward, his expression severe. Suite 912, where Miss Williams is staying, is a premium suite, one of our most exclusive accommodations. It includes full access to all premium areas, private concierge service, and priority reservations. That information is available in the staff access system, which you carry on your work tablet at all times. Why didn't you check? Marcus hesitated, his eyes darting between faces. I didn't think I needed to. The policy is clear. No wristband, no access. I've removed people before for the same reason and nobody ever questioned it. The policy, Vincent said quietly, his voice cutting through the room like a scalpel, also states that staff should verify guest credentials before removing anyone from an area. You skipped that step. Why? Marcus's face flushed. I made a judgment call. Based on what? Vincent pressed, leaning forward slightly. Silence stretched across the room like a taut wire, eyes fixed on Marcus, waiting. The union rep whispered something urgent, but Marcus shook his head, jaw clenched. Based on what, Mr. Dillon? Vincent repeated, his voice still calm, still measured, but with an undercurrent of steel. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. She looked young. I thought maybe she was trying to sneak in. Kids do that sometimes. They wander up from the lower decks trying to use the nicer pools. Kids, Vincent echoed softly. Tell me, Mr. Dillon, how many times have you removed guests from premium areas in the past 6 months? Marcus blinked, caught off guard. I don't know. A few times, maybe 5 or 6. Captain Rousseau consulted a tablet in front of her, scrolling deliberately. According to your supervisor's logs and incident reports filed with guest services, you've submitted 8 formal removal reports in the past 6 months. 7 of those involved black passengers. 1 involved a South Asian family with 3 children. 0 involved white passengers. The room seemed to freeze. Several crew members exchanged glances. One young woman near the back covered her mouth. Marcus's face went from flushed to ashen. I wasn't keeping track of race. I was just doing my job. I swear I wasn't thinking about that. Your job, Patricia Kern said, speaking for the first time, her voice tight with barely suppressed anger, is to maintain cleanliness standards and assist guests with basic amenities. Not to act as security, not to interrogate passengers, and certainly not to publicly humiliate a 16-year-old girl in front of dozens of people. Marcus turned to her, betrayal and confusion flashing in his eyes. You told us to keep premium areas exclusive. You said during the staff meeting last month that we couldn't let just anyone wander into spaces reserved for premium guests. You said it affected the brand experience. Patricia's expression hardened. I said to report concerns to your shift supervisor or to guest services. I said if someone appears lost or confused, offer assistance and gently direct them to the appropriate area, not to take matters into your own hands, and definitely not to target people based on their appearance or make assumptions about whether they belong. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Vincent stood slowly, the movement drawing every eye in the room. He walked around the table, stopping a few feet from Marcus. Mr. Dillon, I want you to look at my daughter. Marcus's gaze reluctantly shifted to Amara. She met his eyes directly, unflinching, her chin slightly raised. She is 16 years old, Vincent said, his voice measured but weighted with emotion barely held in check. She was sitting quietly, reading a book about Black history and civil rights. She wasn't causing a disturbance. She wasn't playing loud music. She wasn't running around the deck. She was simply existing in a space she had every right to occupy. But you decided in a matter of seconds that she didn't belong. Vincent paused, letting the words settle. And when she tried to explain, when she offered to show you documentation, you didn't listen. You doubled down. You blocked her path. You humiliated her in front of strangers who then watched her walk away in shame, assuming she had done something wrong. His voice remained steady, but the weight of his words pressed down on the room like a physical force. Do you understand what you took from her that day? Not just her afternoon of peace, not just her sense of safety on what was supposed to be a celebration trip. You took her belief that she could exist in a space without being questioned, surveilled, profiled, or assumed to be a problem simply because of the color of her skin. Marcus's eyes dropped to the table. His voice was barely audible, hoarse. I didn't mean to make her feel that way. I really didn't. But you did, Vincent said simply. And intent doesn't erase impact. Your assumptions, your biases, conscious or unconscious, caused real harm to a real person. My daughter came back to our suite and cried. She asked me if she'd done something wrong, if she was too loud, too visible, too much. A girl who has never been in trouble, who carries herself with grace and intelligence, was made to question her own worth. The woman with the oversized sunglasses, seated near the front, raised her hand tentatively. Captain Rousseau nodded. Yes, Mrs. Chen? I was there, the woman said, her voice shaking slightly. I saw the whole thing. I didn't say anything at the time, and I regret that deeply. But that girl was doing nothing wrong. She was polite, composed. And when he told her to leave, she didn't argue. She just gathered her things and walked away with her head up. I've never seen someone so young handle humiliation with such dignity. She looked at Marcus. You should be ashamed. Another passenger, the young man who had been reading nearby, spoke up. I almost filmed it. I had my phone out, but I stopped because I didn't want to make it worse for her. Now I wish I had. Because what happened was wrong. Completely wrong. Captain Rousseau cleared her throat, her voice formal. Mr. Dillon, based on the evidence presented, including multiple witness testimonies, system logs clearly showing Suite 912's premium status and access privileges, your own admission that you did not verify credentials through proper channels, and the pattern of removals documented in your employment record, this hearing finds that your actions constituted a clear violation of company policy, discriminatory conduct, and a failure to uphold the values Oceania Cruise Lines claims to represent. Marcus's face crumbled. His shoulders sagged. I'm sorry. I truly am. I didn't know she was the daughter of an investor. Vincent interrupted, his tone sharpening for the first time, cutting like broken glass. That's exactly the problem, Mr. Dillon. You shouldn't need to know who someone is, who their father is, how much money they have, or what connections they hold to treat them with basic dignity and respect. Every person on this ship deserves that, not just the ones you deem worthy, Captain Rousseau continued, her voice steady and final. Effective immediately, your employment with Oceania Cruise Lines is terminated for cause. You will be disembarked at our next port of call in Barcelona. All access credentials will be revoked. You will also be barred from future employment with any entity under our corporate umbrella, including partner companies and affiliated hospitality brands. The union rep started to protest, shuffling papers. Captain, with all due respect, my client has been with this company for 4 years without prior... Marcus held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. He looked directly at Amara, his eyes red-rimmed, glistening. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm truly sorry for what I did to you, for how I made you feel. I can't take it back, but I'm sorry. Amara's voice was soft but clear when she finally spoke, each word deliberate. I accept your apology, but an apology doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the hurt. It doesn't change the fact that you saw me, made a snap judgment based on nothing but my appearance, and assumed the worst. I hope you learn from this. I hope you examine why you made the choices you did, and I hope you do better. Not just for me, but for everyone you encounter going forward. Marcus nodded slowly, unable to speak. Tears streaked down his face. He stood, escorted out by 2 security officers, and the room exhaled collectively, the tension breaking like a wave. As the door closed behind him, Gregory Hale addressed the remaining crew members. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. We are not just in the business of luxury travel. We are in the business of human dignity. If you cannot treat every guest with respect, regardless of their age, race, appearance, or background, then you do not belong in this industry. The meeting adjourned. Passengers and crew filed out silently, many visibly shaken. Later that night, Vincent and Amara stood on the private balcony of their suite. The sea stretched endlessly before them, dark and shimmering under a blanket of stars. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of salt and distant flowers from the coastline they'd passed earlier. Amara leaned against the railing, her father beside her. "Do you think he'll actually change?" she asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the sound of waves. Vincent considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Change requires more than consequences. It requires self-reflection, humility, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. Some people are capable of that. Others aren't, but that's not why we did this." "Then why?" "Because silence protects the system," Vincent said, his voice firm but gentle. "And the system only changes when people are forced to see the harm it causes. Today, everyone on that ship saw it. The crew, the passengers, the leadership. They can't unsee it now. They can't pretend it doesn't happen. And that matters." Amara nodded slowly, processing. "I didn't want to be the center of this. I didn't want to be a symbol or a lesson." "I know," Vincent said gently, turning to face her. "But you were brave. You didn't yell. You didn't lash out. You showed them that dignity isn't negotiable. That respect isn't something you have to earn by proving your worth or your status. It's a fundamental right." She turned to him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "What happens now?" "Now," Vincent said, placing a hand on her shoulder, "we make sure this never happens to anyone else. New training programs developed by equity experts. Independent oversight with real authority. Transparent reporting systems where passengers can file complaints without fear of retaliation. Real consequences for discrimination, not just empty policies. And if Oceania Cruise Lines won't lead the industry in meaningful change, we'll find another company that will. Or we'll build one ourselves." Amara smiled faintly, the first genuine smile since the incident. "You're really going to turn this whole thing upside down, aren't you?" Vincent smiled back, pride evident in his eyes. "I already have. And you helped." 3 months later, Oceania Cruise Lines announced a sweeping overhaul of its equity and inclusion policies. Every staff member, from entry-level positions to executive leadership, underwent mandatory anti-bias training developed in partnership with leading civil rights organizations. An independent review board was established with the authority to investigate discrimination complaints and recommend disciplinary action. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented, and a new scholarship and mentorship program was launched, the Williams Initiative, named not after Vincent but after Amara, to support young people of color pursuing careers in hospitality, travel, and tourism management. Marcus Dillon never returned to the cruise industry. He took a job at a community center in his hometown of Portland, working with at-risk youth and leading workshops on bias awareness. In a quiet moment of reflection during a local news interview, he admitted that being fired was the turning point of his life. It forced him to confront beliefs he didn't even know he carried. Prejudices buried so deep he'd convinced himself they didn't exist. Amara went on to Yale's pre-law program, excelling in courses on constitutional law and civil rights. She graduated with honors, delivered a powerful commencement speech about justice and accountability, and was accepted into Harvard Law School. When journalists asked what inspired her to pursue civil rights law, she always told the same story. About a day on a cruise ship, about a moment of injustice witnessed by dozens who did nothing, and about a father who taught her that silence is complicity, but courage is contagious. The sea, vast and indifferent, carried their story forward, and slowly, steadily, the world began to listen. What city are you watching this from? Drop a comment and let us know.